He was merely a young shepherd boy from a remote border village. Yet when faced with a ridiculously powerful magical beast, there was not the slightest trace of fear on his face. With just a flick of the long whip in his hand, he killed the leopard-like magical beast on the spot. When Turan was 10 years old, he discovered that he possessed this kind of power. At that time, he had been eager to tell his mother. He said that he could make wood float. Not only that, he also said he could create fire and summon wind. But the moment his mother heard this, she instantly lashed out at him in anger. That was the first time he had ever seen her angry, and also the last. After his mother's anger gradually subsided, she called Turan to her side, wanting to have a proper talk with him. She asked Turan whether he wanted to keep living together with her. If he did, then he had to promise her one thing. From that day on, he must never use that power again, and he absolutely could not let anyone discover it. Turan did not understand why, so his mother asked him, "Do you still remember the stories about nobles and knights?" Turan said of course he remembered. She then told him, whether noble or knight, anyone who possessed this special ability would be called a wizard. But nobles and knights were different in essence. Nobles were descendants of the holy people, the Frans, who descended upon the world to save the humans of the old age. As for knights, they were descendants of nobles whose bloodline had mixed with that of humans. So even though they were all wizards, people would still treat nobles and knights separately. And that was exactly why she had to tell Turan why he could not use this power. Because he had inherited his father's knightly power. Outside this town, there were many evil nobles who would treat knights as slaves. So you must remember, you must never let anyone know that you are a wizard. You can promise me that, right? From that day on, for a full 8 years, Turan kept the promise he had made to his mother. But one day, a young man from the village came running to tell the elder. A monster had recently appeared on the edge of the village. That monster was wrapped in pitch-black shadow from head to toe, like a leopard as large as a house. The villagers were all uneasy, but the village chief had already gone into the city to bring back a wizard. As long as the chief brought a wizard back, that monster would surely be subdued. After hearing this, the elder reminded them, "You all must be more careful. Without a wizard, it was almost impossible to kill a monster." The young man replied, "The villagers had already been warned, but not him yet." The elder froze for a moment. "Who is the him you mean?" The young man then told the elder. It was Turan, the shepherd living on Mount Hizaron. At that moment, Turan was lying on a lush green grassy slope, staring boredly at the pale blue sky. The same scenery, the same life day after day. If things went on like this, he would soon forget how to even open his mouth and speak. Just as the boredom was giving him a headache, a voice came. "Poor little brat. The sun hasn't even set yet, and you're already lying here slacking off?" After seeing who it was, Turan directly told him to get lost. "Don't block my sunlight." The man said irritably that Turan had no manners. "Are you still holding a grudge over what happened back then?" "What happened back then?" Turan asked coldly. "You mean when my mother died and you tried to secretly turn my sheep into public property?" The man coughed dryly twice and did not argue. Turan continued, "If that's what you mean, then yes. I'm not that generous. I won't share what my mother left behind with anyone else. Besides, we're not close enough to exchange greetings. Why did you come here? Say it and leave." These words made the old man want to scold Turan on the spot. But Turan's cold gaze cut him off abruptly. The old man averted his eyes, deliberately avoiding Turan's stare. He told Turan that a monster had appeared near the village. It was said to be a leopard as large as a house, and Rop was the one who had discovered it. After hearing this, Turan showed no fear at all. He merely stroked the lamb in front of him and said that it really was troublesome. The old man grew even more puzzled. "You're not afraid? Around here, you're the most likely one to be targeted. I really don't know where you get your nerve from. Anyway, the village chief has already gone into the city to bring back a wizard, so be careful. I'm only warning you because I'm worried about you." The moment he finished speaking, Turan replied coldly, "You are too hypocritical. Why not just say directly that you're worried about the sheep? Why insist on saying you're worried about me? Now that you're done talking, hurry up and get lost. That filthy mouth of yours will only make the air stink if you stay here." The elder trembled with rage, turned around, and walked back the way he had come. In this world, the only beings that could be called monsters were beasts that possessed mysterious powers and magic. If there were wizards above humans, then there were monsters above beasts. For a wizard to come to a remote village like this because of a monster, it seemed Turan would finally get to see a wizard with his own eyes. But if they were wizards brought from the city by the village chief, they might not be anything particularly remarkable, even if they really were wizards. Still, Turan wanted to see with his own eyes what kind of beings they really were. And at that very moment, Turan's keen nose caught a scent. This smell, it was blood. Turan immediately followed the scent of blood. When he reached the source of the smell, he saw that the old man who had spoken with him just now was already dead. He had clearly come to warn Turan to be careful, yet he himself had been attacked first. Judging from the wound, this was definitely not something an ordinary beast could have done. Then it could only be the monster he had spoken of. Turan suddenly sensed movement all around him. As that movement drew closer, he saw with his own eyes the leopard-like monster the old man had described, huge as a house. At the same time, a child at home asked his father, "Can the grown-ups really not defeat that monster?" His father answered, "That's right. If ordinary people like us rush at it, I'm afraid not even our bones would be found again." The child asked worriedly, "Then what will happen to our village?" His father comforted him softly, "Don't be afraid. The village chief will bring back a wizard. Wizards can subdue monsters." But the child still asked innocently, "A wizard can definitely defeat it, right?" His father said, "They are great beings born with magical power. With just a single word, they can destroy those terrifying monsters." And at that moment, Turan was quietly watching that ferocious leopard-like magical beast. He softly uttered a single sentence. In the next second, the leopard-like magical beast actually retreated several meters. Because in that instant, it had smelled the aura of a hunter from Turan. Watching its reaction, Turan muttered in a low voice, "So it doesn't work anymore?" Immediately after that, the magical beast once again viciously pounced on Turan. Turan shouted, "Stop." The leopard-like magical beast was once again driven back several meters by his voice. So it really doesn't work anymore. Otherwise, it wouldn't be unable to stop even after being told to stop. Just then, the leopard-like magical beast raised its sharp claws and smashed them down toward Turan. The golden markings on its face made its savagery utterly plain to see. Before the claws could fall, Turan had already darted to the other side. Seeing how frenziedly ferocious it was, Turan let out a soft sigh. "In that case, I'll use the method a shepherd should use." The magical beast saw him assume that posture and immediately gathered itself to pounce. Turan spoke 2 words toward the stone on his left, "Harden." Then he tightly wrapped the stone with the long whip in his right hand. A golden light also lit up in his eyes. Then he swung the long whip. As he stepped forward, he spoke again, "Faster." The instant the whip lashed out, the stone shot forth like a cannonball, hurtling straight toward that savage magical beast. A loud bang rang out. The stone grazed past the side of the leopard-like magical beast's ear, instantly bringing up a spray of blood. The magical beast flew into a rage on the spot, baring claws and fangs as it lunged at Turan like mad. But what Turan had truly aimed at just now had never been its ear, but its head. Almost in the very next instant, the stone pierced straight through its skull. Looking at the magical beast collapse dead onto the ground, Turan murmured to himself, "This is the first time I've used this ability on a monster. But now, should I throw you into some ravine, or what should I do?" Turan could not help but curse once. Those bastards in the village really know how to cause trouble. After handling all of this, he returned to his home on the mountain. Because he had once promised his mother, he had never told anyone that he was a wizard, nor had he ever used that power in plain sight of everyone. Just as he was about to rest, there was a sudden urgent knock at the door. The person outside shouted his name while pounding on it. Turan had only just pulled the door open when he saw a group of villagers staring at him with fierce looks. It turned out they had come to ask about the old man who had gone to see Turan earlier. He let out a yawn and asked indifferently, "Are you trying to say that I killed Rebus?" Before he could even finish speaking, the burly man at the front grabbed him by the collar, glared at him, and roared, "Yes, it was you, you damned bastard. You harmed that innocent old man and even threw him to the monster as food." Turan was silent for a moment before speaking. "I understand why you want to pin this on me. You're afraid of the monster and don't dare fight it, so all you know how to do is run. As a result, the oldest man in the village got dragged into it and died. You're afraid others will call you cowards, so you want to shift the blame onto me." The man grew even angrier after hearing this and raised his fist, about to knock Turan down hard. But Turan merely tilted slightly to one side and dodged it. To Turan, magic was the easiest way to solve things. As long as he strongly desired something, it would come true at the cost of consuming magic power. Turan softly uttered the word, "Fall," and someone in the crowd immediately crashed hard to the ground. To suppress them, there was actually no need for flames or any kind of direct attack. Just a little inconspicuous force was enough. It would not go so far as to kill anyone, but it could still pin them to the ground with absolute pressure. This was how, all these years, he had hidden the fact that he was a wizard. Looking at the people sprawled all over the ground, Turan let out a long sigh. If only you had used this energy at Braza's funeral. He then turned and asked the group of women beside them, "Did you come to fight too?" They hurriedly explained that they had not. They had only come to see him. Turan was silent for a while, then told them to take these people back. After dealing with all these annoying matters, he finally prepared to take off his clothes and rest. Turan knew very well that after that commotion just now, the village would definitely become even more chaotic. When he went down the mountain to trade, they would surely take the chance to extort him. But it did not matter. At worst, he would just beat them until they were willing to offer a fair price. Just then, a voice interrupted Turan's thoughts. Turan muttered under his breath, "Are those people crazy? They've come back to pick a fight again so soon." He yanked the door open, about to shout at them angrily. But to his surprise, the person standing outside was actually a middle-aged man. Turan frowned and asked who he was. The man paused for a moment and said, "Forgive my intrusion. I originally wanted to ask you for a favor during my journey, but it seems this may not be a suitable time." When Turan learned that the man was a traveler, he fell silent for a moment. He then apologized, saying that he had just driven away a few unwelcome guests and had thought they had come back again. These formal expressions were all things his mother had once taught him, but because of that miserable village, he had almost never really spoken properly with anyone, which made him feel somewhat awkward. Looking at the man's outfit, Turan grew even more puzzled. Why would a traveler carrying a sword come to such a remote little town? He asked, "Are you looking for an inn?" The moment he said it, he heard the sound of the man's stomach growling. Turan let out a sigh, but still opened the door and let him in. After preparing a little food for him, Turan said that his household was poor and he had nothing much to offer. While gulping the food down, the man said this already counted as a feast. Then he asked Turan, "Have you never seen people from outside the village?" Turan replied, "That's right. I grew up on this mountain from childhood, living only by herding sheep, and there are rarely outsiders in this small town either." Those words made the man lift his eyes toward Turan, finding him very interesting. Because for a shepherd who had grown up here since childhood, Turan was far too familiar with proper manners. The man praised Turan's parents, saying they must have taught him well. Turan said that his mother had taught him all of that, but she had passed away a few years ago. Regretfully, the man made a gesture of prayer and said that having raised such a proud son as Turan, she must surely be proud in heaven. He then thanked Turan once again. Turan said he was only living in the way his mother had taught him, and then asked curiously, "Why did you come running to such a remote countryside place?" The man told Turan that someone had asked him to help, to deal with a leopard-like monster. The moment Turan heard those words, his whole body froze on the spot. He immediately pressed on. "You're the wizard the village chief mentioned, aren't you?" The other man admitted it straightforwardly. "I am that wizard. Now, may I ask you a question?" Turan did not hesitate and nodded at once. The man then asked. He had sensed that the monster was in this area, yet he had found no trace of it. Even stranger, although Turan clearly knew about the village chief and the monster, he remained calm and had not even fled. If that monster were going to attack a human, the first one it would target would definitely be you. Are you really not afraid? For a shepherd who has never left this little town, you're far too unusual and far too brave. So who exactly are you? Are you a wizard? Those words dragged Turan's memory back to the days when his mother was still alive. Back then, he had asked his mother, why must no one ever know that he was a wizard? His mother had told him, it was all because of those evil nobles. If nobles are compared to shepherds, then knights are like the dogs raised by shepherds. They may love you as if you were family, but when needed, they will sell you, or even sacrifice you. So I don't want you to live that kind of life. Turan, do you want to keep living like this with your mother forever? If you do, then remember this. Never let anyone know that you are a wizard, especially other wizards. Once they discover it, they will tear us apart, turn you into their sheepdog, and cast you aside whenever necessary. To keep from being recognized, you may even be forced to kill people. At that moment the man asked again, why aren't you saying anything? Did my joke just now go too far? After saying that, he scratched the back of his head awkwardly. Turan was silent for a moment, then apologized in a low voice, saying that he did not really understand humor. The man shook his head and said that he was the one who should apologize. Sorry, I shouldn't have joked like that just now. Turan forced out a slight smile and said it was his first time hearing a wizard make a joke, so he had not reacted right away. But the man said Turan's reaction had been so interesting that he could not help teasing him a little, though it really had gone a bit too far. After saying that, he held out his hand to Turan and said that after talking for so long, they still had not properly introduced themselves. It's a pleasure to meet you. I am the traveler Kane. Turan also reached out and shook his hand. My name is Turan. I'm a shepherd, and I'm 18 this year. Kane casually stated his age, 75. Turan froze for a moment and asked, you don't look that old. Kane said that wizards lived longer than ordinary people and also aged more slowly. Turan then asked him why he had become a traveler. Kane said that he had served the Albion family for 60 years, and later chose to leave, wanting to spend his later years wandering everywhere and living a rootless life. And so, the two exchanged their own stories. For the first time in Turan's life, he was chatting with someone this easily. Without realizing it, evening was already approaching. Kane stood up and said that he should be going. He reached out and placed a silver coin on the dining table, saying it was an Arab silver coin, one of the purest silver coins, and more than enough to pay for the meal. Turan also stood and thanked him. May your hunt go smoothly in every way. Kane walked to the door, then turned back and told Turan that he would probably be staying here for the next few days, so he might come by again to mooch a few more meals. A few days later, as usual, Turan drove the flock up to the hillside to graze, and once they had eaten and drunk their fill, he shouted, gather. At once, the sheep all around raised their heads and moved toward Tehran. Even now, Tehran was still immersed in yesterday's conversation, his mood unusually light. This was the first time he had met a wizard, and also the first time he had talked with someone so freely. Cain always spoke with easy humor, and his way of speaking and breadth of knowledge far surpassed the adults in the village. And over the past few days together, Tehran had also confirmed one thing: Cain really was a good man. In the past, Tehran had always believed that knights were nothing more than merciless towns trained by arrogant nobles. But Tehran did not know how to tell Cain that there was no longer any monster on Mount Hizaral. Meanwhile, Cain was searching the mountain forest for traces of the monster. What made him feel that something was wrong was that clear signs of battle remained here, yet he could not sense the slightest trace of its aura. Could that monster already have been hunted down? But who did it? Or did the village chief give the task to another wizard besides Tehran? He could not help letting out a sigh of relief. He did not care who had killed it, as long as this place was safe. That was what mattered most. But at that moment, Cain suddenly sensed something unusual, and he spun around sharply, looking behind him. A sharp claw instantly came right before his eyes, and the owner of that claw was a hideous monster. A huge wound split open its skull, and tiny fangs had grown around the edges of the wound. Cain's heart sank as he muttered in confusion, "The wraith of a monster? Who on earth did this?" Before he could sort out his thoughts, the monster's claw thrust straight at him, and with a loud bang, it smashed heavily into the spot where Cain had been standing just moments before. A chill ran through Cain. After killing the monster, why had that wizard not absorbed or dispersed the magic power in the corpse? Logically, any wizard who hunted a monster should have known that. Yet he had allowed the corpse to turn into a wraith? Unless, he was just a novice knight who did not know the common rule that if magic power is not absorbed, it will become a wraith. Or perhaps they had some other purpose. But whatever the reason, he had to destroy it now. At once, a golden arrow condensed in Cain's palm, and shot straight toward the monster. But the moment the golden arrow touched the monster, it shattered directly into powder. Cain's pupils contracted. My magic is ineffective? Could its magic power be far above mine? In the next instant, the monster vanished from before Cain's eyes. Cain quickly swept his gaze around, trying to determine where it had gone. At that moment, a string of bubbles rose from his shadow. Immediately after, a grotesque claw suddenly shot out from beneath the shadow. At the very instant the claw was about to hit him, Cain barely reacted in time and narrowly dodged it. Lowering his head to look at the wound on his hand, he was shaken to the core. This was not a level that some mere knight could handle at all. At the very least, only a lower-ranking noble would stand a chance. He had never expected to encounter a monster wraith of this level in such a remote mountain village. Life truly was full of surprises. He lowered his head at once and made up his mind. He would not die like this. Even if he had to die, he would take it down with him. He forced all his magic power into his palm, preparing to pierce its vital point the instant the monster lunged. At the very moment the monster once again formed its claws, Cain was also about to unleash his strongest killing move. And just at that critical moment, a blue light suddenly flashed through the forest, and in the next second, it pierced straight through the monster's head. Cain stared at the scene before him in shock. The wraith that had been absurdly powerful just moments ago had simply collapsed like that. Then a voice sounded by his ear. "Are you all right?" When Cain saw that it was Tehran, he said in a low voice, "The shepherd is a wizard. That kind of joke really can get someone killed." "So Tehran, you really are a wizard?" As he reeled in the whip in his hand, Tehran calmly admitted it. Cain frowned and asked why he had not told him earlier. Seeing Tehran remain silent, Cain changed his words. "Then let me ask a different question. Why did you save me just now? You could have just walked away." Tehran muttered quietly, "Maybe, because I'm kind." He remembered that earlier conversation he had had with Cain. Back then, Tehran had asked Cain why he would go so far. With his abilities, earning much more money would have been effortless, so why had he still agreed to come hunt the monster for the village chief? Cain had smiled. Because they are pitiful people, living in such a remote place, without even basic protection. How could they not be pitiful? Hearing that, Tehran had replied, "But that's not your fault." Yet Cain had said, "Mages are born inheriting the power of the gods, so they ought to protect those who are unarmed." Of course, not all mages think that way, but in his view, every person ought to have their own beliefs and their own way of living. So Tehran repeated the words, "Every person ought to have their own beliefs and their own way of living." But at that moment, the wraith that had already collapsed suddenly sprang up again and lunged at them once more. After the two of them dodged the attack, Cain immediately made Tehran understand clearly, this monster's level was not something they could confront head-on. Unless one was a noble, no one could face it directly. He told Tehran to notify the village chief and evacuate the villagers at once. As for himself, he would stay here and hold it off. He knew he was overreaching, and he had no idea how long he could last, but he still chose to stand his ground. Tehran said only one thing, "It's all right." After saying that, he activated the magic power within him. Watching Tehran's movements, Kane was shaken. So that strike just now had not even been his full strength? A young knight hidden away in the mountains could actually hunt a wight that even nobles had to treat with caution? This was the judgment of the old knight Kane at that moment. Because what he saw before him was neither the bluff of a mountain boy nor the reckless impulse of a fugitive knight. What entered his sight at that moment might well become the beginning of something that would overturn the world of wizards. The stones on the ground around them slowly rose into the air under Tehran's control. At that moment, Tehran wanted to confirm only one thing. Where exactly was his limit? Kane beside him no longer hesitated either. He said he could not let Tehran fight alone. No matter how great his talent, that thing was extremely difficult to deal with. They had to join forces if they wanted any chance of winning. But with a loud bang, Kane realized that he would only get in the way. He had not even had time to react to that last move. Realizing that he could not help, Kane made an important decision. To let Tehran's talent fully bloom at this very moment. While Tehran kept dodging the Wraith's attacks, Kane shouted, "A Wraith can't be killed by physical attacks." Tehran immediately pressed, "Then what should I use?" Kane answered, "Fire, or lightning." No sooner had he spoken than Tehran formed a mass of flame on the Wraith's body, but the fire failed to stir even the slightest effect. Tehran said in a low voice, "This is completely useless." Only then did Kane realize that Tehran did not even understand the most basic common knowledge of wizards. At that moment, a terrifying suspicion flashed through Kane's mind. Could this Wraith have been left behind after Tehran killed the monster? If so, that would mean Tehran had never absorbed any magic power in his entire life. Kane immediately told Tehran, "Don't let the fire cling to its body first. Compress the flames into a ball, then shoot it out." In the next second, a small fireball formed in Tehran's palm. Tehran raised his hand and pointed toward the sky, and the small fireball suddenly began spinning faster. Then he stepped forward with his left foot, and hurled the fireball fiercely at the monster with his right hand. With a bang, the Wraith's entire body instantly burst into roaring flames. From not far away, Kane immediately shouted, "Don't relax, keep pouring in magic power, and burn this Wraith until not a trace of it remains." Tehran did as he said, letting the blazing fire continue devouring its form. Watching this, Kane finally let out a breath of relief. They had won. That powerful Wraith, one that required at least noble-level strength to contend with, had been dealt with just like that, and it had been done by a shepherd boy from a remote mountain village. Kane then urged Tehran, "If you don't want to encounter another Wraith, absorb its magic power at once." Hearing that, Tehran asked him how to do it. Kane said, "Stand in front of the corpse and imagine pulling something into your body." Tehran slowly closed his eyes and imagined it as Kane instructed. Strands of green light rose from the monster's remains and flowed into Tehran's palm. The moment Tehran opened his eyes, he felt as though a strange and powerful force had been poured throughout his body. And Kane, standing behind him, spoke as well. "Do you feel a kind of pleasure welling up from inside your body? If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would never have believed it. This is actually your first time absorbing magic power. After awakening, magic power grows slowly with age, but the fastest way to increase it is to kill monsters or wizards and absorb their magic power." That made Kane find it hard to believe. Without ever having absorbed any magic power, Tehran had still been able to wield magic of that level. Such talent was simply terrifying. Kane called out Tehran's name. "I apologize for my earlier rudeness. May I ask, which family do you come from?" The words "which family" left Tehran confused, but he still reminded Kane, "You should deal with your wound first." Only then did Kane remember that his arm was still bleeding without stopping. After returning to his dwelling, Tehran simply bandaged his wound for him. Looking completely at ease, Kane said softly, "How strange. Someone as noble as you would actually do something like this for me." Tehran answered helplessly, "I've told you many times, I'm not noble. I'm just a shepherd who doesn't even know who his real father is, so stop saying things like that." Seeing Tehran's eyes fixed straight on him, Kane finally agreed slowly, though he still felt puzzled inside. Why would a wizard as strong as Tehran be a shepherd? Of course, he did not mean it as an insult. He simply felt that such a life did not suit Tehran. Tehran told him that it had been his mother's dying wish. From as far back as he could remember, she had made him live that way, until the very moment she passed away. Kane listened in astonishment, completely unable to understand why she would leave such a wish behind. Then Tehran seriously explained it to him using the very words his mother had once given him. Looking at him, Kane said, "Your mother's decision was very wise." Those words stunned Tehran. He had thought Kane would say it was merely overprotection, but Kane denied that. Wizards truly possessed great power, but power inevitably invited conflict. More than 20 years ago, several noble families had erupted into a great war. The Albion family, whom Kane had served, had once gone to war with the Zahar family, and far too many people had died in that conflict. Of the more than 3,000 Albion knights who fought in that war, over 900 were killed. Even crueler, every person close to Kane had been among those 900. His friend always said that after the war he would open a laundry shop. His teacher was always scolding him, saying he still had a long way to go. And his beloved wife and son, they were slaughtered by the Zahar family, until in the end he alone was left alive. So in a sense, Tehran's mother had been right. The life of a knight sometimes disappeared more easily than that of a commoner, and could more easily become meaningless. But she was also wrong about one thing: she underestimated your talent. It may not be very dignified for me to say this in my current state, but I really was once considered a fairly skilled knight. Yet compared with someone like you, who has never absorbed any magic power, I am nothing at all. You should understand how strong your talent is. At the very least, you have talent on the level of a noble. Even among nobles, you would count as top tier. Tehran listened in a daze. Could it be that his father had not been a knight? Kane slowly rose to his feet. In very rare cases, nobles can also give birth to children with poor talent. Knights can also produce children with noble-level talent. So in a sense, I actually think it would be best for you to leave this place and see the world outside. Tehran asked him why, and Kane answered, humanity needed more nobles and knights, because humanity had not yet truly become the master of this world. A long time ago, the other races banished by the gods were still waiting in the shadows for a chance to return. But the nobles of today care only about fighting among themselves. That is why this age needs powerful and kind nobles like you even more. Of course, the most important thing is, you probably aren't satisfied with being only a shepherd anymore, are you? Tehran was silent for a moment, then asked him, if he left the mountain, what could he gain? Kane said, that depends on what you want. Fame, power, or friendship, those things are hard to obtain here. You could travel everywhere as I do, eliminating monsters that threaten humanity. You could also become an adventurer exploring the unknown, or be adopted by some family and step onto the path of power. Only then did Tehran truly understand what Kane meant. Those things really were more attractive than herding sheep every day. Tehran thanked Kane. This was the first time he had felt genuine curiosity about the outside world. Kane said he would support whichever path Tehran chose. Then he asked Tehran, what is your bloodline ability? Seeing Tehran's face full of confusion, Kane seemed to remember something and immediately added, sorry, I keep forgetting that you actually don't understand magic. A bloodline ability was a trait that nobles inherited from their ancestor, the Freyans. Whether or not one had a bloodline ability was also an important standard for distinguishing nobles from knights. He formed a small fireball in his palm and asked Tehran, when you use magic, is there any kind of spell that comes especially easily to you? Or do you have some particularly unusual ability? After hearing that, Tehran began sorting through the possibilities Kane had mentioned in his mind. Then he told Kane that his sense of smell was very sharp, and that he was especially accurate at throwing stones. Kane said that if his sense of smell was abnormally strong, then it was very likely a bloodline ability. Skill with projectile weapons was one of the Albion family's specialties, but that was actually considered a very common talent. Kane continued asking for more specific details, but after Tehran finished explaining them, he saw Kane's expression darken at once. What is it? Kane said quietly that he might know which family Tehran's bloodline was closest to. It was a powerful family, known as pursuers, and also as hunters, Zahar. It was also the same family that had once slaughtered the Albion family in war. Those words left Tehran frozen on the spot. He had never imagined that his family was actually Zahar, the very family that had killed all of Kane's loved ones. For a moment, Tehran did not know what he should say to Kane. Should he apologize? But those acts had been committed by relatives he had never even met. To him, they were almost the crimes of strangers. Kane suddenly spoke. Tehran, you don't need to make that kind of face. You did not personally take part in that war. Tehran understood what Kane meant, yet still did not know how to respond. Kane put on his usual restrained smile again and said that this was the predicament of adults. If people always wanted to wash blood with blood and repay hatred with hatred, then conflict would never end. Tehran asked Kane, then regarding his wanting to go down the mountain, did Kane feel no regret? Kane patted Tehran on the shoulder and said, if you go down the mountain and pursue power, then in the end you will very likely join the Zahar family. Someone with your talent is bound to attract attention. But I trust your character. You saved me and even exposed the identity you had meant to hide all your life. So I believe that if you enter Zahar, and even rise to a high position, then perhaps you could instead prevent the next terrible war. But you do not need to force yourself to decide right now, and you still have not decided to join Zahar. At that moment, Tehran said that he thought he might have made up his mind, and that he wanted to try going down the mountain. But not yet, he would leave after Kane's injury had improved somewhat. Kane said it was only a scratch, but he did not refuse Tehran's kindness. From that day on, Kane taught Tehran the basics of magic every day. To cast magic, one first had to possess magic power. Magic power was the key that opened magic, but keys also had types. and whatever kind of magic one wanted to use had to be matched with the proper kind of magic power. Tehran asked what the standard for matching was, and Cain explained. It is mainly determined by three things: bloodline, affinity, and causality. The first is bloodline. It depends on the blood you are born with, and this applies to most nobles who are not knights. For example, it would be difficult for you to heal my wound. But for someone of the Southern La Vista bloodline, even without training, it would be easy. That is the power brought by bloodline. After hearing that, Tehran asked at once, then what about the second one, affinity? Cain stood up and said that affinity could be understood as proficiency. As for the last one, and the most important one, causality, even Cain himself did not fully understand it. If you tried to use magic power directly to kill me, what would happen? Tehran said probably some light would appear over his head, and then nothing would happen. Cain placed his palm on a cup and said that this was exactly what it meant to lack causality. When the result you want has no corresponding cause, or the goal you want to achieve is too difficult, this kind of thing happens. These explanations made Tehran understand many things at once, and he told Cain that he thought he roughly understood what causality was. If Tehran wanted to kill Cain, then rather than spending magic power to wish for death, it would be better to provide a concrete cause, such as burning Cain to death with fire. Cain could not help praising him. To learn causality this quickly, such talent was well suited to becoming a scholar. Then Tehran asked, if he could control ordinary animals freely, what conditions would be needed to control magical beasts? And so, they kept discussing and reasoning things through. Tehran had never expected learning magic to be so difficult. An outstanding wizard not only had to know how to use magic power, but also had to understand the principles behind it, and know when to use it and how to use it. Remembering something, Tehran asked Cain again, did the Zahar bloodline also have special magic? Cain did not hesitate, and directly said that it specialized in stealth and tracking. Then told Tehran to try it right away. Tehran closed his eyes and imagined inwardly, as if suppressing even his breathing, not being seen, making no sound, and leaving no detectable scent. In the next second, Tehran's figure began to fade, and vanished from before Cain's eyes on the spot. Cain spoke to confirm it. You succeeded. I can't see you now. After a while, Tehran's figure gradually reappeared. Cain could not help murmuring, this ability is still just as dreaded. During the war, it was what Albion knights feared most. It is indeed powerful, but remember, it is not invincible. Now, I will teach you some ways to train your magic. Tehran, however, asked him, why are you teaching so much to a wizard from an enemy family? Cain said it was because Tehran had saved his life and treated his wounds. Most importantly, Cain trusted Tehran's character. Not long after, when the village chief learned that Tehran was going to sell off his flock and leave the village, he was stunned. He questioned Tehran. Why had he made such a decision on his own without discussing it with them? If Tehran left, who would herd the sheep in the future? Tehran replied directly, they could just find another shepherd themselves. What did it have to do with the village if he was dealing with his own property? In any case, I will only accept a fair price. If you refuse to buy, then I will release all the sheep and leave. You can go catch them yourselves, but I guarantee that it will be a lot of trouble. The village chief knew very well that Tehran was the sort of person who always did exactly what he said. If he truly enraged him, the village would gain nothing from it. So in the end he still took out the money. After everything was settled, Tehran prepared to leave this place together with Cain. On the road, Tehran asked Cain, don't those villagers still owe you payment? If you want, I can go get it back for you. But Cain said that he had not planned to take any payment in the first place, not to mention that the one who killed the magical beast had not been him, but Tehran. We'll part here. Sorry, but I refuse to travel with you. I'm more used to going alone. Looking at him, Tehran said, it's all right. I should be the one thanking you for your guidance instead. Cain smiled warmly and told Tehran to take care on the journey. Tehran also told him to take care, and said he hoped they would meet again someday. And so, the boy kept watching Cain's departing figure as he went farther and farther away. Only much later did he understand why he had respected the old knight so deeply. Even though his mother had never failed to give him love, deep in the boy's heart, he had still longed for someone who could appear like a father. A few days after parting with Cain, Tehran, traveling alone, entered a desolate wasteland. The air was full of fine sand, and his field of vision was being swallowed away bit by bit. At that moment, Tehran saw a group of peddlers traveling from village to village, so he decided to go over and ask for directions. He walked up and asked directly, how do I get to the nearest city? The old man at the front told him, if he kept following the road they had come from, he would reach a city called Murray. After memorizing the direction, Tehran thanked him. But before he had even taken 2 steps away, the group called out to stop him. You think you can just leave after asking for directions? Don't you plan to give us something in return? As soon as those words fell, several of them drew their swords at the same time, forcing Tehran to put down the bulging pack on his back. Tehran frowned. Are you robbing me? The leader sneered, robbing you? Yes. This is the wasteland. Nobody cares if a few people die here. We're still willing to talk nicely for now, so take off the bag. Don't force us to kill you first and strip it off afterward. That would be more troublesome and bloodier. Turan's eyes instantly turned cold. He remembered the magical principles Cain had taught him, and instead showed a faint smile. You want to use me for practice? Those words brought out a burst of laughter. Listen to this lunatic. He really thinks he's some wizard. Turan raised his palm, and the moment he uttered the word wind, several bodies were lifted straight into the air. Turan thought to himself, Cain was right, giving magic a clear cause could greatly reduce consumption. With just a little magic power, he could create such powerful wind pressure. He then uncorked his water skin and drew the water out with magic, forcibly enlarging, compressing, and solidifying it into a mass. In the next second, several ice spikes formed around Turan. The bandits' faces turned pale with terror when they saw this. But before they could even flee, the ice spikes had already pierced their bodies. Just as Turan was about to keep attacking, the bandit leader hurriedly begged for mercy, saying they had not known Turan was a wizard and pleading for him to spare their lives. But before he had even finished speaking, one of his accomplices, clutching a weapon, launched a sneak attack on Turan from the side. Turan lightly raised his right foot, then stomped down hard, and several earthen spikes shot up instantly from the ground, piercing straight through their bodies. The bandit leader stared in utter shock. How was this possible? And just like that, it was over? Turan told him he had a question to ask. Because of the one-sided crushing defeat he had just witnessed, the bandit leader no longer had any will to resist. He simply dropped to his knees and said he would answer anything. Why did you attack me for no reason at all? Did it never occur to you that someone traveling alone might also be a wizard like me? The bandit leader answered at once, because Turan had lowered his head. They had treated him so rudely, yet he had lowered his head to thank them, so they had assumed he was just an ordinary person. After hearing that, Turan thanked him as well, because it had taught him something very important. A glimmer of hope lit up in the bandit leader's eyes. Then can you let me go? But before he could finish speaking, he saw water droplets rapidly gathering above his head. Turan did this because Cain had once warned him. Once he set out on his journey, he would encounter all kinds of people. But when it came to vermin like bandits, he must never go soft. If he let one go today, then tomorrow 10, or even 100, good people might die because of them. So Turan did not hesitate and killed him directly. After that, he continued onward along the tracks left by the wagon. The boy's heart was in chaos at that moment, because he had killed people. He felt guilty, but he could not let those people go. Cain's warning kept echoing in his mind. A swarm of vermin willing to rob and kill for profit could turn their blades on the next passerby at any moment. The wagon tracks stretched across the sand, then were slowly swallowed by weeds. As Turan recalled Cain's teachings, the turmoil in his heart gradually calmed. Then, he stepped into a brand new world. Turan was stunned. So the Murray the bandit leader had spoken of was actually the city before his eyes. He looked around curiously. This was the first time he had seen so many people gathered in one place. And the buildings here were nothing like the ones in the village. The unfamiliar surroundings left Turan unsure where to go next for a moment. Soon he remembered Cain's words. If you want to rest in an unfamiliar place, look for an inn. Whether in a village or a city, there would always be one. So Turan turned and asked the fruit vendor at the nearby stall. At first, the vendor politely asked what he wanted to buy. But the moment he heard that Turan was only asking for directions, his attitude changed at once and he told him not to block the stall if he was not buying anything. Turan did not understand it at all. Why be so rude? Did the city have a rule that you had to buy fruit before asking a question? So Turan pointed at an apple nearby and asked, "How much is this?" Only when he saw Turan take out coins did the vendor's tone soften. "You look like an outsider. What do you want to ask?" Turan placed a silver coin in his hand and asked where he could find an inn. The man said to go straight along the road behind the cloak shop, then turn left, and he would see a building with a blue roof, which was the largest inn in the city. Turan entered the inn and met one of the staff there, Lena, who welcomed him with a smile. Turan asked how much it cost to stay one night. Lena clasped her hands together and said brightly, 16 dublins. After confirming the price, Turan paid. Then he asked her whether there were any monster bounties nearby. He asked this because he needed to hunt monsters and absorb magic power, and Cain had also told him that taking bounties not only made one stronger, but also earned money. Seeing Lena remain silent, Turan asked again. But Lena calmly said, "Sir, there is nothing in this world for free." Turan immediately handed her a few more coins. Only then did Lena tell him, if he wanted to take bounties, he should go to City Hall. That place handled all kinds of public affairs, and the staff there were all employed by the city lord. But the sun has already set, so it's probably closed by now. If you want to take monster bounties, go tomorrow. Lena then asked curiously, "Are you a monster hunter too?" But Turan had no idea what monster hunter meant. So Lena explained, "Some people say that ordinary people can become wizards as long as they kill monsters. Are you trying to become a wizard too? Though most of that is probably just a lie." At that moment, a hand rested on Tehran's shoulder. A man spoke. The rumor was not false. Becoming a wizard by killing monsters was absolutely real, and he had seen it with his own eyes. Lena looked at him in surprise. "Midden, you're actually still alive?" Midden answered, "Didn't I say so? Until I become a wizard, I won't die." Tehran brushed his hand aside and asked directly, "If an ordinary person kills a monster, can he really become a wizard?" Midden told him, "For a wizard to grow stronger, he had to kill monsters. Likewise, if ordinary people killed monsters, they too could become wizards. And the four of them were hunting monsters for exactly that reason, to become powerful wizards." Tehran pressed further, "Had anyone succeeded yet?" Midden scoffed. "How could that be possible? In this city, only the Lord and his 3 subordinates were wizards. And besides, you say you want to hunt monsters? With equipment like that on you? That's way too shabby." Tehran did not argue, because what the man said was indeed true. The only weapon he had that looked halfway decent was a slingshot, and at most it could only hit something about the size of an egg. Even so, Midden still invited him, saying their team was short one shooter. If Tehran was willing, he could go hunting with them. But Tehran refused directly, because he had no reason at all to have to go with them. After lying down on the bed, Tehran thought back on the day's experiences. The outside world really was chaotic. Even now, he still could not quite believe that he had already left the village. And perhaps because of that, he felt even more curious about what would come next. Just then, he heard a knock outside the door. Tehran sat up on the bed and asked, "Who is it?" Before parting, Cain had reminded him that even while staying at an inn, he must never let down his guard. A city was not absolutely safe either. So Cain had repeatedly warned Tehran to act carefully. Not daring to be careless, Tehran secretly gathered magic power in his left hand and reached for the door with his right. The moment the door opened, he saw that the person outside was actually Lena from earlier that day. Lena asked whether he had gone to sleep yet, saying that she was worried the room was cold and wanted to come help him warm himself up. Tehran frowned and asked what she meant by that. Lena said directly that she meant exactly what she said. As long as he paid a little extra, she was willing to do anything. But Tehran said, "What if he did not want anything at all?" Lena did not believe him, telling him not to pretend. She could tell just by looking at his face. But when she looked up and met Tehran's eyes, she found him calm and rigid, as steady as stone. She froze on the spot. This too had been one of Cain's warnings. When dealing with women like those in inns, one had to remain cautious at all times. Because many people carried diseases. A wizard's body was strong, so he might not suffer much himself. But once infected, if he then went to another girl, he would end up harming others. So Cain had repeatedly reminded Tehran, "Do not let desire drive you into doing something you would regret." This made Tehran feel that surviving in a big city really was not easy. Whether it was the fruit stall or Lena, everyone was like this. Even a single sentence, even a piece of information, had to be priced first. The rules here were as cold as iron. Tehran keenly heard voices coming from the stairway. Someone asked Midden, "Boss, why did you want to bring that kid along earlier? Honestly, he doesn't look like he'd be of any help." Another person chimed in, "That guy's pretty arrogant too. We'd be better off using him as bait for monsters." But Midden said, "He reminds me of myself when I was young. I heard he wants to hunt monsters with that kind of weapon, so I'm a little worried. There's not much I can do, but at the very least, let him live a little longer." Hearing those words from the bed, something stirred in Tehran's heart. Perhaps this city was not made up only of cold and ruthless people. The next day, following the directions Lena had given him, Tehran arrived at City Hall. The clerk responsible for registration looked up as he approached and asked, "What do you need?" Tehran stated his purpose directly. He wanted to hunt monsters and take on a bounty. In truth, Cain had already warned him. This world would not show kindness to anyone for no reason, nor did it need to. If you wanted people to treat you well, show them that you were a wizard. Ordinary people would naturally bow their heads. When the City Hall worker handed the bounty notice to Tehran, he casually added, "Your life matters more than anything. Just take a look. Bring it back after you're done." Even though Tehran read it very carefully, the worker still did not think he could really kill a monster, but he still reminded him, if he truly did kill it, then he had to bring the corpse back to the city. Because if a wizard did not disperse the remaining magic power, the corpse would become a wraith. According to city law, killing a monster and then leaving the corpse outside without dealing with it would be punished by execution under the highest penalty. Actually, even without being told, Tehran understood how terrifying wraiths were. There was no way he would make the same mistake again. Still, Tehran asked in confusion, "Weren't knights supposed to hunt monsters?" The man gave a helpless sneer. "Do you think knights have nothing better to do? Knights have to maintain order inside the city. As for those monsters outside the city, that's for bastards like you to deal with." Watching Tehran's figure slowly walk away, he muttered under his breath, "He's gone? Looks like there'll be another corpse outside the city." Not long afterward, Tehran brought the monster from the bounty straight back. The worker looked utterly incredulous. Impossible. How could this happen? How did you bring it back so quickly? Did you really kill this by yourself? Turan nodded calmly, then asked how he was supposed to collect the reward. Another clerk immediately ran to the counter, took out the reward money for the three-legged crow, and stuffed it into Turan's hand. But even after paying him, they still stared at the nearly intact monster corpse, their eyes full of disbelief. When they saw that Turan had not left, they instead wondered why he was still standing there. So Turan asked whether there were any other monster bounties. They stared at him in shock. You still want to keep hunting? A few days later, Lena was so excited she seemed like a different person, laying out a whole feast for Turan. She could never have imagined that someone like Turan could kill 30 monsters in just 3 days. You must have made a lot of money, right? But Turan said money was not his only goal. More precisely, what he wanted was the monster's magic power, and because of that magic power, he had grown stronger. Compared with when he first met Cain, his magic power had surged several times over. Turan looked at his own palm, and he knew very clearly that he had reached a critical point. If he kept farming those weak monsters, it would probably be hard for him to grow any stronger. At that moment, Lena's cheeks flushed red, as if she wanted to say something to Turan. But when she looked up, she realized that almost all the food on the table had already been eaten by him. Turan looked lean, but his appetite was astonishingly large, and even the cook was pleased to be feeding him. It had been a long time since he had made so many dishes. Just as Turan had finished eating and was about to return to his room, a large hand suddenly grabbed the back of his collar. The man lowered his head and stared at Turan. Eating that fast? I hear you've made a lot lately. How about taking it out and sharing it with everyone? Before he had even finished speaking, Turan raised his hand and struck him across the face with a chop of his palm. The man screamed on the spot. Turan stared at them. Didn't you want money? Then come and take it. Another man swung a fist at Turan and cursed him for getting carried away. Turan twisted aside to dodge it, then answered with a heavy punch that drove the man backward. The first man was completely enraged and grabbed a stool, about to smash Turan flat with it. But before the stool could come down, Turan reached out and blocked it firmly. Then Turan made a flicking motion with his left hand, and with a single flick to the forehead, he sent both the stool and the man flying away together. At that very moment, Lena shrieked, "No fighting in the inn." The arriving midden immediately apologized to Turan. I've already taught those two a harsh lesson. I guarantee it won't happen again. We've really been short on money lately. When they saw you, they probably got jealous. After saying that, Midden told the two men to come over and apologize. Turan asked him, was the situation really that bad? Midden said they were only short of money for the moment, but in another 3 days, they might not even be able to afford the inn fees. After hearing that, Turan almost did not hesitate at all and directly took out a bag of coins and handed it to Midden. Midden was stunned and asked why Turan was doing this. Turan explained, this was to repay his earlier kindness. At the time, Midden had said he was worried about Turan's safety and wanted to take him along. He was just about to ask how Turan knew that, but Turan cut him off. There is nothing free in this world. If you take the money, then give me information. Midden nodded at once and said that gathering information was exactly his specialty, and that he would tell Turan everything he knew. A few more days passed. Turan planned to leave Murray after this hunt was over. Because Midden had given him information about the next city, it was about time for Turan to set out, and that information was even more valuable than Turan had expected. In the end, Midden really was a good man. Though not as seasoned as Cain, he was purer for that very reason, and more willing to show his kindness openly. Just then, Turan suddenly caught a scent that felt wrong. His heart sank, and he could only pray that he was overthinking it. When Turan arrived at a tree marked with monster claw traces, he immediately swept his gaze around in vigilance. In the next second, he saw a bloodied, mangled person leaning against the trunk. Turan frowned. Wasn't this one of Midden's companions? At that moment, he understood. His earlier worry had already come true. Looking at the corpse, which had clearly been dead for quite some time, Turan said in a low voice, "What exactly happened here? Where is Midden?" From behind another tree trunk, a man spoke in a trembling voice. A rabbit, it was a rabbit. Turan immediately saw the monster rabbit in the distance gnawing on a corpse. The monster rabbit was covered in stiff, goat-like fur, and sharp fangs had grown from its ears and limbs. Turan instantly raised his guard. In the next second, the monster rabbit charged straight at Turan, and Turan immediately dodged aside. Still in midair, Turan was startled inwardly. That speed is insane. I almost got hit just now. Once his feet landed firmly, Turan snapped out his shepherd's whip. He pulled his left foot back and assumed a stance to gather force, then raised his hand and cracked the whip through the air. Several stones instantly shot toward the rabbit, but with a few quick swipes, the monster rabbit shattered all the stones. Turan's heart sank. Not only was it fast, its blocking was this strong too. It planted its feet and gathered force, then lunged at Turan once again. What it did not expect, however, was that Turan vanished from the spot on the spot. Just as the monster rabbit came to a sudden stop, Tehran suddenly appeared behind it, a short blade flashed, and stabbed straight into its neck. Then Tehran quickly retreated, using the momentum to pull back. At the very instant Tehran vanished again, the monster rabbit abruptly appeared where Tehran had just been, its claws sweeping across and tearing a tree trunk clean in half. Like something gone mad, it repeated the same pounce and rend attack over and over. The originally dense forest was torn open into a clearing within just a few breaths. Yet it still could not find any trace of Tehran, and it threw back its head with a roar, when the severe wound in its neck finally caused it to bleed without stopping, and it ultimately collapsed, convulsed, and could no longer get up. Only then did Tehran's figure slowly appear in the distance. He walked closer and observed it carefully for a moment, then extended his palm toward the corpse and fixed a single thought in his mind. Energy instantly rose from above the corpse and poured into Tehran's palm. This magic power was completely different from anything he had absorbed before. It was even far greater than that of the leopard he had first encountered. At that moment, a voice sounded by Tehran's ear. "I can't believe it, you're actually a wizard. Then why were you hiding your identity?" Tehran did not explain, and only asked with a trace of regret, "Of the four of you, is there anyone who needs me to take their belongings back to their family?" The man only had time to say no before breathing his last. Looking at Midden's corpse before him, Tehran remembered Midden once telling him that there was a great city nearby called Orem, and that it had a library. It was said to hold tens of thousands of books, but that was not a place just anyone could enter. Only wizards were allowed inside. At the time, Tehran had still been hesitating over whether he should go and see it. Now, he no longer hesitated. He was going to the great capital Midden had spoken of, Orem. That big man who had once been willing to show kindness even to a stranger had died here just like that, and Tehran felt an indescribable regret in his heart. "I hope that over there, he can be happy." Having arrived in a new place, Tehran stood in line to enter the city. Once, Tehran had thought that a small city like Murray was already astonishing enough, but now, the city before him left him utterly speechless. This was the great capital, Orem. Here, one had to queue even to enter the city, and the crowd was overwhelming. He looked toward the guards at the gate, who were checking wanted posters one by one. Tehran's heart sank. As expected of the great capital, even its rules felt suffocating. But when it was finally Tehran's turn, the guard raised a hand and stopped him. Frowning, the guard said he had never seen clothes this filthy, and told Tehran to clean himself up before entering the city. After quite a while, Tehran finally entered Orem, and also found the library Midden had mentioned. The magnificent building before him made Tehran instinctively wonder, was this thing built with magic? He saw the guard at the main entrance, so he went up and explained that he wanted to go inside, but the guard coldly replied that this was a library only wizards could enter. Tehran immediately explained that he himself was a wizard. But the guard did not believe him at all, and sternly demanded, "How could someone like you possibly be a wizard? If you dare impersonate a wizard, I absolutely won't let you off." As soon as the words fell, a mass of red magic power rose in his palm. Tehran merely lifted his gaze, and an even stronger pressure spread directly from his body. The guard's face turned deathly pale in an instant, and in the next second he collapsed to the ground, while another guard beside him hurriedly asked what was wrong. Only then did that guard realize that the person before him was no ordinary wizard. This was noble level, perhaps even higher. Terrified, he got to his feet and immediately bowed respectfully. "I am a knight of the Kenyuata's family. May I ask which family your excellency comes from?" Tehran asked in return, "If I don't state my family, am I not allowed in?" The other man hurriedly said that was unnecessary, but to use the library, he still needed permission from the master of Voltas. But what Tehran had not expected was this: what had sounded like a simple process when called permission turned out, in practice, to be far beyond anything he had imagined. Unused to being attended to, he could not help turning to them and saying, "You can stop now. I can wash myself." The maids, however, trembled in fear and said that if they failed to serve him properly, they would be severely punished. Tehran could only nod awkwardly in agreement. Before long, the maids who had been attending him revealed stunned expressions. Tehran asked them, "Is there something on my face?" They hurriedly explained, "It is because Milord is too handsome. We lost ourselves for a moment. Please forgive us." Tehran did not put on airs, and immediately told them not to mind it. Just then, a door in the distance opened, and two figures walked toward Tehran. The petite girl in front looked him up and down and said, "So you're the guest who looked like a beggar? Now that you've cleaned up, you really do look a bit like a prince." Tehran introduced himself first. Hearing that, the other party gave her own name as well, Angela. Angela then asked which family Tehran came from, but Tehran said that for personal reasons, it was inconvenient for him to reveal it. A trace of regret flashed through her eyes, and she thought, so he was hiding his identity? Then she might as well make a little joke of it. In the next second, a powerful surge of magic power burst from her body. She simply wanted to test just how deep Tehran's magic power really ran. but almost in that very instant, an equally matched force rose from around Turan as well. Angela's guard immediately stepped in front of the maids, as though facing a great enemy. When both auras withdrew at the same time, Turan let out a helpless sigh. But Angela let out a short cry of surprise. She could hardly believe it, even after a long moment. Her hand was still trembling. Angela then smiled and stared at Turan as she asked, "Will you marry me?" Turan froze on the spot. With blatant mischief in her expression, Angela added, "Just kidding. Why are you making that face?" The guard beside her looked deeply helpless. But she still tossed out one more line, telling Turan to seriously consider it, since the place beside her was still empty. After saying that, she turned and left. As her figure went farther and farther away, Turan slowly lowered his eyes. His hand, too, was trembling slightly. So Angela's magic power really was on par with his, but whether that was normal or not, he had no answer. Not long afterward, Turan was led to meet the Lord of Aurum, Rug Voltas. Rug clearly already knew why he had come, and first only asked his name. After Turan briefly introduced himself, Rug bluntly declared, "Lately, many people have heard strange rumors and rushed to Aurum all at once. But the truth is, there are no ancient forbidden arts in the library, nor any secret that can make your magic power surge." Turan said he did not mind. Seeing how calm his attitude was, Rug nodded in agreement. However, Rug said it was too late today, so Turan should rest first and enter the library tomorrow. The next day, the two guards responsible for protecting the library respectfully invited Turan inside. As the great doors slowly opened, the moment Turan raised his eyes, he saw the most breathtaking sight of his life. At the center of the tower-like library, a staircase spiraled upward in winding turns, as if it had no end. It passed through layer after layer of bookshelves, beyond piles of tomes stacked like mountains, all the way to the beam of light pouring down from the dome above. Turan could not help murmuring in admiration. So this is what a library is. Just then, a voice sounded beside him. "I'm very pleased to meet you. I am the librarian here. The Lord has already informed me, and I am responsible for telling you the rules here." Turan frowned slightly. How could a little child be the librarian? She continued anyway, saying the rules were simple, only two. First, if anything is damaged, you must pay for it at full value. Second, no books may be borrowed out. So while you are in the library, I will be watching you the whole time. Seeing how serious her tone was, Turan agreed without hesitation. But when I'm reading, could you stand a little farther away? I'll feel uncomfortable. Also, since you're the librarian, you must have read all the books here, right? She immediately replied with confidence. Finding books is my specialty. Whatever you want, you can ask me. So what kind of book do you want? Romance? History? Or are you too young and looking for something erotic? Turan was silent for a moment, then told her that he wanted to start with the most basic knowledge of the world. Not long afterward, she brought Turan a large pile of books. She said that many of these books were several hundred years old, and she was not sure whether they were the most suitable, but this batch should be of some help. Turan thanked her, then casually pulled one book from the pile. As his fingertips brushed across the rough cover, that smooth yet cool touch made Turan tremble slightly. So this is what a book is. After reading for only a short while, Turan increasingly felt that books were practically magic. After that, the boy repeated the same thing every day, quietly reading in the library. Book after book, he gradually came to understand the geography of the world, the ways different races lived, the etiquette of wizards, the making and processing of various items, and even the monsters and ruins of the old age began to grow clear. As knowledge kept piling up, the world in the boy's eyes, that place which had once been chaotic, unfamiliar, and impossible to name, was being illuminated little by little. From then on, mountains and rivers had names, races had origins, and even the wind brushing across his face seemed to carry messages that could be understood. When Lord Rug saw Turan again, he praised him, saying, "It seems you really have made full use of the library." Turan did not deny it. Rug then continued, "I allowed you into the library partly because I regarded you as a noble, and partly out of goodwill. Of course, I also hope that this goodwill will be repaid." Turan asked what he needed him to do. Rug told him that a monster had appeared north of Aurum and was attacking travelers. He had once sent 4 knights to subdue it, but without exception, all of them had been devoured by the monster. So a noble had to act personally, yet the family currently had only 2 people they could deploy, and that was the repayment Rug wanted. He asked what kind of help Turan needed, but Turan said he did not need any reward at all. Still, he felt that something was not quite right. Ordinarily, a noble-level wizard would not personally deal with this sort of matter. Seeing his doubt, Rug explained that monster had blocked the northern road, and that road was Aurum's most important trade route. The matter had already dragged on for 10 days, and he had to reopen it as soon as possible. Turan immediately understood. 10 days earlier he had not even arrived in Aurum yet, and this was the real reason why Rug had so readily allowed him into the library. The next day arrived, and Turan followed the group out through the city gates. Angela, walking at the front, lazily stretched. Father really knows how to scheme. To actually drag a guest along to hunt monsters, are we really that unreliable? After saying that, she looked at Tehran and said she was not blaming him, only complaining that her father was taking things too seriously. Someone beside her wanted to remind her to watch her wording. Angela gave him a look, and he immediately fell silent. Then the man turned to Tehran and briefly introduced himself, saying his name was Marvin Valtos. Angela idly kicked at the stones by her feet, muttering that they should hurry up and finish this so they could go back and rest. Marvin, standing beside Tehran, suddenly asked whether Tehran was interested in his sister. When Tehran said no, Marvin smiled. Then I can rest easy. At that moment, the man scouting ahead came back with a report. When the group went over to look, they found a shadowed carriage. The scout guessed that the monster had likely left the wreckage there on purpose, just to stop anyone from going north. After observing it for a moment, Tehran identified the monster immediately from a handprint on the pile of wood. He turned back to the group and said, it was a monkey. Angela looked confused, so Tehran pointed at the handprint, and continued explaining. After attacking the caravan, it went back into the forest. As long as we find its tracks and follow them, we'll locate it soon. Seeing that Angela and Marvin, the two wizards, hardly knew any tracking magic, Tehran picked up a piece of cloth from the wreckage and said that he could try. Angela immediately perked up and asked whether he had that bloodline. Tehran only said that he was simply better at tracking, and because he used it often, he had become familiar with it. After saying that, he held the cloth up before his nose. Almost instantly, Tehran caught the direction of the monster's scent trail. He raised his hand, pointed in one direction, and told the group to follow. Before long, when they reached a stream, Tehran spoke again. The monster had stopped here, and it had probably washed itself. Angela was shocked. Monsters would actually wash themselves to avoid being tracked? Tehran calmly replied, it might also just have wanted to wash, so it did. Suddenly, Tehran whipped around and shouted sharply, watch out behind you. No sooner had the words fallen than a gigantic monkey bent low with a furious roar, and scooped up a huge handful of stones. The soldiers had not even had time to scatter, before the stones rained into the crowd like a storm, and in an instant 7 or 8 soldiers were killed on the spot. Tehran also moved quickly through the rain of stones, dodging at speed. When the barrage briefly subsided, he immediately looked toward Angela's side. He saw that Angela and Marvin had almost simultaneously used soldiers' bodies to block the attack, then thrown those soldiers aside like trash. That sight made Tehran feel even colder inside. His mother had been right. Angela shouted for everyone to counterattack at once. The remaining soldiers raised their weapons and charged toward the giant monkey. But before the soldiers could even reach it, the giant monkey turned and ran. Angela and Marvin immediately gave chase, but the monkey was too fast, and they simply could not catch up. Just then, Angela was suddenly startled by something flying at extreme speed. It was a small stone shot from the rear of the group. It pierced straight through the giant monkey's chest. That scene made both wizards turn around at the same time. Standing in the rear was Tehran, swinging his long whip. Seeing the cold sharpness in his eyes at that moment, Angela finally fully understood. She raised her right hand and softly uttered, flame. The power of fire surged from her entire body into her palm. In the blink of an eye, the flames condensed into a burning giant serpent, which lunged toward the badly wounded monkey. With a tremendous boom, the sea of fire instantly swallowed the monkey whole. Something stirred in Tehran's mind. So this is the fire demon bloodline of the Valtos family? The surrounding soldiers finally let out a breath of relief. Was it over? Angela turned to Tehran and said that when that stone had flown past them just now, it had made their skin crawl all over. Marvin provoked her from the side. Sister, were you scared? Angela immediately told him to shut up, saying the one who had screamed like a little girl was obviously him. The soldiers also began resting on the spot. Just now, that round of bombardment had injured them badly, and some had even had an entire arm smashed off. Looking at that miserable scene, Tehran thought, this time, they had been lucky that there had not been even greater casualties. The only ones truly dead were the two soldiers Angela and Marvin had used as shields. Thinking of that, Tehran looked at them once more. The bodies of wizards are far stronger than those of ordinary soldiers, yet they can still use the weak as shields without a second thought. Is this what Mother kept warning me about? Marvin seemed to notice his gaze and asked what was wrong. Tehran only said it was nothing. Angela, however, said, come over here too and absorb the magic power with us. Then the three of them raised their hands toward the already charred corpse. As Tehran absorbed the corpse's magic power, he also confirmed what had been written in the books. Even when several people absorbed together, the magic power left in a corpse did not decrease because of it. Before long, Angela and Marvin each reached their absorption limit. When they turned back and saw that Tehran was still continuing to absorb, they immediately understood. This was why their father had insisted on bringing him into the group. That earlier precision in projectile attacks, along with a magic capacity capable of contending with Angela's. Just thinking about it was enough to make their scalps go numb. What was more, he was still a noble who had not yet reached the limit of his growth. As the sun gradually set, they too returned to Orm's domain. On the way, Marvin said to Turan, "Honestly, if not for you, we never would have beaten that monster. From tracking it to bringing it down with a stone, you carried every step of it." Turan waved it off and said it was nothing. What he truly regretted was that he had noticed too late and let that thing strike first, because Turan had not expected the monster to have tracking ability as well. That made Marvin freeze on the spot. Tracking ability? What do you mean? So Turan explained, the awakened abilities of monsters could often be inferred from their outward features. The monkey they had killed had exaggeratedly large hands and red eyes, which were completely different from its original form, so it had most likely awakened the abilities of powerful throwing, as well as long-distance sight or seeing through the forest. Marvin listened in a daze. He could not believe that Turan had thought through all of this in such a short time. Turan, however, said that he had only looked up a book about monsters in the library. That left both of them stunned. Who would ever go to a stifling place like the library? Angela had gone once herself, out of curiosity, but the books had been too obscure, and she had left before even finishing half a volume. So Turan advised them, next time you have the chance, ask the librarian. Maybe she can find something easier for you to read. But the term librarian made Angela look puzzled. She touched her chin and thought for a moment, then asked Turan, was there really such a person in the library? After that, Turan returned to the library once again. The moment he pushed the door open, the librarian excitedly cried, "Welcome back." Only then did Turan realize that he had been too careless before. Whether knight or commoner, no one would ever address a noble directly by name. In Orem, the only proper form of address was honored lord. And judging from the way this little thing acted, she did not resemble a normal librarian at all. So Turan asked her, "How do you know my name?" When Turan asked that, a faint smile curled at the corner of her mouth. Leaning back against the edge of the desk, she asked in return, "You only just realized now? I saw it on your permit. As long as it is within the bounds of this library, there is no blind spot in my sight." Turan stared at her and asked, "Then what should I call you?" She said she did not actually have a name, and Turan could call her whatever he liked. He could even call her something cute, like my beloved. But Turan replied flatly, "Then I'll just keep calling you librarian." She narrowed her eyes. "Why are you suddenly being so polite? It's making me a little embarrassed. Just a few days ago you were ordering me around, telling me to find this and that." Seeing her lean closer and closer, Turan immediately stepped back a few paces and said he had never done such a thing, "And don't come so close. It makes me uncomfortable. But I do have a question. Are you a wizard from the old age?" She answered Turan that from the very beginning, she had never been human, and was more like a kind of spirit. If she lodged herself in a living thing, she would become a living being. If she lodged herself in something neither living nor dead, she would become a ghost. In other words, this library was her body. And this current appearance existed only for communication. In essence, it was generated according to the user's preferences. So your preferences may be a little. Before she could finish, Turan cut her off and told her not to distort the facts. After that, Turan studied her seriously. Not long afterward, he raised his hand and reached it into her body. She froze on the spot and asked where exactly Turan had just touched, because it felt strange. Realizing what he had done, Turan immediately apologized awkwardly. But her mood darkened, and she said Turan simply could not understand how frustrating it was to be unable to touch others at all. If she could do it, she would punish every careless bastard who took books away. That line only confirmed Turan's suspicion even more. The Voltas family, and even everyone else who had ever used the library, knew nothing of her existence. She did not deny it, only saying that until now, not one of those people had possessed the qualifications to sense her. Her creator had imposed a restriction. Only those whose type completeness exceeded a certain standard could perceive her. Don't you think it is romantic? A me that only you can see. But Turan could not understand at all what she meant by type. What exactly was that supposed to mean? So she explained. It was one of the terms wizards used for bloodline. The moment he heard the word bloodline, Turan immediately pressed her. Then what exactly was his bloodline? She had been about to tell him to ask his parents, but Turan told her that he had long since been an orphan. She licked the corner of her lips. "If you allow me to examine your body, I can help you take a look." That sentence frightened Turan so much that he stepped back 2 full paces, and his reaction instead made her reveal an eerie smile. In the next moment, she thrust her hand directly into Turan's body. While groping around, she muttered incomprehensible words under her breath. After quite a while, she finally told Turan. There were some fragmented traces, but the largest main part was the bloodline of the pursuer and the hunter, the very mark of the Zahar family. Right after that, she sensed another bloodline as well. So it was mixed? Turan froze. What did she mean by mixed? She explained that it meant Tehran was descended from 2 different bloodlines, but the other bloodline had been locked, so even she could not tell what it was right now. She told Tehran that locked bloodlines were common in bloodline combinations. Once Tehran became stronger, it would naturally unlock. Her words made Tehran think of his mother. With his mother's upbringing and manners, she could never have been a commoner. She was very likely the descendant of some collateral noble branch, only with a bloodline so diluted that it could no longer sustain knight-level magic power. After roughly sorting all this out, Tehran sincerely thanked her, but she said, "If you want to thank me, stay another month." After learning her true identity, Tehran no longer read alone in silence, but constantly questioned her about the things in the books. Not only did she not find him annoying, she patiently broke everything down and explained it to him point by point. During this time, Tehran discovered that what she knew far exceeded all the bookshelves here, because over the past 1,000 years, the knowledge from all the books plundered and brought into the library had been carved into her memory. To Tehran, that knowledge was priceless. She made Tehran understand that disease came from microorganisms, and rot from the devouring of bacteria. He also gradually grasped certain basic laws, such as the refraction of light, heat produced by friction, and the processes by which living things are injured and healed. After understanding these things, Tehran decided to try the beginning of decay. He lightly touched an apple before him with his fingertip, and before long, the apple rotted on its own. That sight made Tehran's skin crawl, not because he could not do it, but because he finally understood that once the principle was understood, the consumption of magic could be reduced much further. From that moment on, the world Tehran saw was completely different from before, and this in turn strengthened his abilities as a wizard. This also explained why certain powerful families monopolized knowledge. If every wizard understood these things, they would lose their advantage. Tehran's words made the librarian realize something, and she murmured softly, "No wonder that as time passed, people's understanding had instead grown lower and lower." At last, Tehran told her that he had to leave, because the master of this city had been openly hinting that he should go. She immediately began crying and fussing, demanding that Tehran take her with him. Looking at her collapsed on the floor, Tehran asked her, could she really leave this place? She said she could not leave, but she wanted Tehran to stay. As long as Tehran did not go, she would take good care of him. Tehran refused her, which made her drift angrily off to one side. In the end, she reminded Tehran that there were still many divine ruins on this land, and told him to visit them from time to time. Perhaps he might encounter a spirit who knew even more than she did. Tehran pushed open the library doors and turned back to tell her that he would come back again. Without turning around, she only tossed out one line, "Come if you want, and if you don't, then don't." Tehran turned and told her not to worry. There were still far too many books he had not finished reading. After that, Tehran left the vast city. According to the map he had checked in the library, the territory of the Zahar family lay in the Emerald Desert, just east of Orem, and that was Tehran's next destination. There, he intended to look for clues about his parents. But he was not in any hurry, because if those clues were going to disappear, they would already have vanished completely over the past 18 years. And if they were still there, they would not suddenly be buried just because he arrived a little later. He had no idea how long he had been walking when a sound caught Tehran's attention. It was the neigh of a horse. He pushed aside the grass and looked over, and saw a strong horse standing stubbornly in front of a person, protecting them. And facing the horse stood two people with purple skin and white hair. One of them said mockingly, "Damn it. For a mere beast to have this kind of strength, looks like we need to find a way in first." As he spoke, he spread his 5 fingers, and purple magic spread from his palm. That eerie magic caused the surrounding corpses to start rising at once. The moment Tehran saw this, he immediately understood. Those two were dark elves, and what they were using was most likely the necromancy described in the books. For a moment, Tehran hesitated over whether to intervene. He did not know whether the fallen people had provoked the dark elves first, or whether the dark elves had struck first. But in the very next second of his hesitation, one of the dark elves picked up a severed arm and stuffed it straight into his mouth to chew. The female dark elf beside him asked, "Whose hand is that?" She wanted one too, but the male dark elf refused, saying she had already taken one just now. Tehran's heart dropped. They were eating people. He immediately activated his invisibility. While the female dark elf was still complaining that human males were too hairy, a stone instantly smashed the head of the male dark elf who was in the middle of swallowing. Purple blood splattered all over the female dark elf's face. The undead beasts that had been summoned also turned into a pool of black water at that same moment. She did not hesitate, and immediately summoned those beasts controlled by necromancy again. Another stone flew in, but this time it was knocked aside by the horn of a goat-like beast. The female dark elf then commanded the beasts to charge toward the direction from which the stone had come. The bull-like beast smashed trees into pieces, but there was nothing there. She instantly realized it. Tehran had hidden himself. Her rage surged, and she activated necromancy again, summoning a fox-like beast. whether by smell or some other kind of perception. That fox-like beast immediately locked onto Tehran's hiding place. She shrieked, "So that's where you are, filthy demon." Immediately afterward, she commanded the remaining beasts to pounce on Tehran. Tehran spread both hands, and an immense power of flame instantly gathered in his palms. In the next second, the flames blasted forward. But the fire burned only the fox-like beast, while the bull-like beast still charged wildly at Tehran through the flames. Tehran could only dodge aside at once. The strength of these undead beasts far exceeded his expectations. Fortunately, he had killed one dark elf instantly at the start. Just then, a sharp pain shot through his calf, making Tehran's whole body shudder. He turned to look and found that the fox-like beast had bitten into his leg. Without hesitation, Tehran kicked it away hard. But the bull-like beast he had just dodged charged at him again. There was no time to avoid it, and Tehran was sent flying head-on. The tremendous force made him cough up blood on the spot. As he lay there gasping, the beasts had already surrounded him. The female dark elf burst into mocking laughter. "Serves you right, you dared kill one of my people. I will make you beg for life and long for death." But before she could finish, the horse protecting its master struck her body with a powerful kick. Under the horse's repeated fierce attacks, the female dark elf staggered badly and actually began calling for help. The two beasts that had been about to finish off Tehran immediately turned around and attacked the horse instead. Humiliated into a frenzy, the female dark elf viciously shouted that she would tear the horse to pieces. But just then, with a bang, a small stone pierced through her head. The body, no longer supported by its head, instantly collapsed to the ground. With the necromancy out of control, those beasts also melted into a pool of black water. Tehran's lower abdomen was still cramping, and he was breathing harshly, only barely able to support himself on one knee. The horse walked over to his side and slowly drew near. Looking at it, Tehran thanked it softly. If not for it, he would already have died just now. As night fell, the person protected by the horse finally woke up as well. But the moment he saw the scene before him clearly, he let out a startled scream. Meanwhile, Tehran, sitting across from the campfire, did not even lift his eyelids. Only after his emotions gradually settled did he hesitate and ask Tehran, "Who are you? Why are you here?" Tehran looked at him and explained calmly, "I was the one who saved you from the dark elves." At that moment, the horse also came over to him and gently pressed close. The man immediately lit up with joy, stroked the horse's mane, and called its name, Tilly. Looking at the approaching horse, Tehran also praised it. "It's clever. It knew to protect its master, and it even knew to drag you somewhere safer." After a few exchanges, Aziz gratefully told him where he came from. He was from the Burke family, and Tehran also gave his own name. Not long afterward, Tehran asked him, how had he gotten into conflict with the Dark Elves in the first place? Aziz said hoarsely that he had been traveling with his servants when that group had suddenly attacked them for no reason. He had long heard that other races were cruel, but he had never imagined they could be this cruel. At that point, tears began streaming down his face. After his emotions had stabilized a little, he apologized for losing control, saying that he had only fallen apart like this because he had lost the people most important to him. Tehran asked, "Were they your family?" He shook his head. "No, they were the knights and servants who had watched me grow up and raised me from childhood." Tehran paused slightly. This was a noble who actually cared about ordinary people. Tehran asked again, "How many dark elves attacked you?" Then he added that he had already killed 2 of them. Aziz hesitated before saying, "That should be all of them." Tehran closed his eyes and spread his senses through the surrounding area, searching carefully. Very quickly, he confirmed it. There really were no other dark elves nearby. Aziz asked Tehran in a heavy voice, "Do you have some urgent mission to attend to?" Tehran said he was simply traveling as well. Aziz did not understand. "Someone as strong as you should come from a great family, shouldn't they? Why are you traveling alone?" Tehran shook his head and said he was not that strong. In that battle just now, he had only managed to kill one first with a sneak attack, and then fight the other head-on afterward. He had barely won only because that red horse had helped him. After saying that, he deliberately released his magic power. Puzzled, Aziz released his own magic power as well. The moment the two forces met, Tehran realized that Aziz was actually stronger than he was. If he had not absorbed the magic power of the 2 dark elves just now, Tehran definitely would not have surpassed him. And Aziz was equally shocked. Someone who could take on 2 dark elf necromancers at once had magic power only equal to his? Could it be that his combat instincts were abnormal, or that his bloodline was too special? But what he found even harder to understand was why such a person still traveled alone. Looking at Tehran, he said, "If you don't have a destination yet, would you be willing to join our Burke family? As long as you escort me safely back to my family, I will pay both for saving my life and for this escort all at once. Our Burke family are vassals of the great Abient family of the north, and for generations we have been enchanters who craft magical items. If you agree, we will custom make a perfect magical item for you." After that, they buried the dead retainers and knights one by one. Looking at the freshly raised earth over the graves, Aziz said softly, "It's finally over." If he could, he would have wanted to send them back to their respective hometowns, but he could not. He turned to Tehran and said seriously, "Thank you." Tehran looked puzzled, so Aziz explained, he was actually thanking Tehran for not mocking him. Even though he was a noble, he had cried over the deaths of his subordinates. His father had told him since childhood that this was pathetic, and that a true noble had to keep moving forward and stand upon sacrifice. Tehran smiled lightly. "That isn't weakness, it's compassion." Hearing that, Aziz said nothing more, and instead reached out his hand, saying that he looked forward to fighting alongside Tehran. Tehran stared at that hand for a moment. This seemed to be the first friend he had ever made. Then he reached out too and gripped it tightly, saying that he also looked forward to it. They had no idea how long they had walked when Aziz set an iron box down on the ground and asked Tehran whether he wanted to rest first or keep going. Tehran stared at the metal box and asked in confusion what it was. Aziz explained, it was a cold storage box, and inside was the food they had bought in the city. It could preserve most food for more than a week. As he spoke, he remembered something else and simply began introducing the magical items he had been carrying all along one by one. Some produced water at the press of a button, some could collect wood and build shelter, and others could sound an alarm. Even the clothes he was wearing had a self-cleaning function. After hearing all that, Tehran could only sigh in amazement. The uses of magical items really were outrageous. Patting his chest, Aziz promised that once they returned to the main house, he would definitely give Tehran an even better reward. If the family did not allow it, he would make it himself. Then he asked the question that had been weighing on his mind for a long time. He said that along the way, he had seen Tehran use an absurd number of different spells, almost too many to count. He could not help asking, "Have you spent your whole life practicing magic? Or do you have some extremely powerful bloodline ability that lets you learn any magic?" Tehran answered helplessly that most of those things were simply things he had always been able to do. As for his bloodline ability, he himself was not sure. So Tehran reminded him, had they not agreed not to dig too deeply into bloodlines and family backgrounds? Aziz immediately looked awkward and said he had only been joking, and besides, a truly invincible bloodline could not possibly exist. After apologizing, he asked curiously again, "That face of yours looks no older than 30, your actual age should be under 80, right?" Tehran told him that in less than a month, he would turn 18. Aziz was stunned on the spot. For wizards, a difference of decades doesn't mean much. But I really can't imagine it. You aren't even 18 yet. It seems there are actually two geniuses like you in this world at the same time. Two people? That word made Tehran pause. Aziz explained, the other one may not be at your level yet, or she may already have surpassed you. Her bloodline is absurdly strong. In any case, the other genius I know is my cousin. Hearing this, Tehran asked whether he could have that person make a magical item for him. Aziz immediately refused, because his cousin came from the main family, and was also the Princess of Albion, and very likely might one day become the head of the family. And unlike ordinary wizard families, the heads of great families did not lightly pass their position to their own children. Because in a great family, there could be dozens of relatives of the same generation, and among them there would always be someone stronger than the family head's child. But among this generation, Misha had been born with the highest possible talent. After awakening her magic power, she needed only 10 years to master a vast amount of combat magic, and so gained the family's full support. Now, at almost 21, her status was already nearly equal to that of a core family member. After hearing that, Tehran could not help asking, with such magic power at such a young age, had their family held a funeral? Aziz nodded and said yes. After the great-grandfather of the main family died, his magic power had been devoured by Misha, though they had also received a share. Tehran understood completely, and asked no more. This was how great houses maintained their peak strength. Pointing ahead, Aziz told Tehran that they were almost there. Following the direction, Tehran looked ahead, and saw the docking plains, the central territory of Albion. Afterward, they entered a castle, a property of the Burke family. A middle-aged woman opened her arms and greeted them with a smile. "My child, welcome home." Before the words had even finished, Aziz rushed over and hugged her, shouting, "Mother." This scene left Tehran dumbfounded. Hadn't Aziz said he was 43? Someone nearby reminded Aziz to mind his form of address, and that he should at least say mother properly. After they exchanged a few pleasantries, Aziz introduced Tehran to everyone, saying that Tehran had saved his life. Without Tehran, he would never have made it back. Aziz's mother immediately pressed him for details. That pilgrimage route should not have been so dangerous, so what exactly had happened? Only then did Aziz say that he had been attacked by dark elves. Aziz's mother's expression instantly turned cold. Those scum had dared lay hands on her child, and she immediately declared that she would gather troops and tear them to pieces. But another middle-aged man immediately advised, "Please calm down, my lady." After saying that, He turned to Tehran and asked which family he belonged to, but Tehran said it was inconvenient to say. The man paused for a moment after hearing that. Tehran added, more accurately speaking, he himself did not know which family he belonged to. My mother was a commoner, and I don't know who my father was. Aziz was stunned on the spot and hurriedly asked Tehran, why didn't you tell me that before? Tehran replied bluntly, it's nothing to be proud of. Then Aziz's mother slowly spoke. Then you belong to the unknown house. Since you saved my child, I, the head of the Burke family, will definitely see that you receive the reward you deserve. But arranging a room in the manor is somewhat difficult right now, so I will have you stay at the finest inn in the city. But Aziz immediately protested, asking, Mother, shouldn't we let him stay directly in the house? Lady Burke answered, ordinarily there would be no problem, but an important guest is currently staying with our family. We cannot let a stranger of unknown origin stay here. I hope you understand. Just as Aziz was about to argue further, a voice came from the doorway. Aunt, you don't need to worry about me. The person who saved Aziz is hardly going to turn around and assassinate me. Everyone turned toward the entrance at once. There stood a girl dressed in black, with black hair and a cold expression. Seeing her, Aziz blurted out, Misha, why did you suddenly come here? Only then did Tehran realize that the girl before him was the princess of Albion Aziz had spoken of. But what made him even more uneasy was this, in his perception, her condition felt like that of a corpse. Aziz's mother explained, Misha had nearly been assassinated by vermin from Zahar, so she had come here to lie low for a while. Aziz was stunned. The main house had extremely tight security, so how could someone have tried to assassinate her there? Could it be? Before he could finish, Misha directly confirmed it. There is very likely an insider. There are more than just one or two people in the main house harboring ulterior motives. But I'm tired today, so I'll go rest first. Seeing this, Lady Burke instructed a maid to take Tehran to a guest room in the manor to rest. Early the next morning, Tehran opened his eyes on the bed in the guest room. After getting dressed neatly, he stepped out of the room and began observing the corridor and the layout of the manor. Just then, a voice called out to him. It was Aziz, greeting him with a smile. You're still as early rising as ever. What are you doing in the hallway by yourself? Tehran pointed at the light on the wall and said that it seemed quite interesting. Aziz explained that it was a lamp made with magic, and that he sometimes made them himself as well. If Tehran wanted one, he could go fetch one from the storeroom. Tehran refused, saying he was only curious. Suddenly, a bolt of golden lightning burst outside the window, and the powerful fluctuation made Tehran freeze on the spot. As he looked out the window, Aziz said, Misha is practicing magic. She's always this diligent. Tehran asked Aziz, is this the magic of the Albion bloodline? Aziz nodded. Yes, this is the Storm bloodline. Tehran even felt a flicker of envy in his heart. That talent was like the blood of a god. He could not help wondering just how powerful the head of Albion's family must be. Aziz asked Tehran whether he wanted to go take a look. Tehran was indeed curious, but for someone of unknown origin like him, getting close seemed inappropriate no matter how he thought about it. Aziz, however, did not care at all. What does it matter? You're not an assassin. I can vouch for you. And besides, what I really want to know is, which of you two is stronger, you or Misha? Only then did Tehran understand. Aziz's real purpose in bringing him there was to put him and Misha side by side and compare them. Aziz revealed a rather odd smile. There were some things he had kept bottled up for years. He had long wanted to see what it would look like when Misha was finally humbled. A moment later, Aziz called out to Misha ahead of them. Seeing the two of them approaching, Misha asked, Aziz, and who is the person beside you? Hearing this, Tehran briefly introduced himself. Misha asked again, then why have the two of you come to see me now? At that, Aziz scratched the back of his head and explained, Misha, it looked like you were practicing magic, right? So we wanted to join in. And besides, didn't we train together before? Aziz's words seemed to remind Misha of something. Oh, right, back when we trained together, I learned a spell after trying it twice, while you spent a whole week on it and then ran off in tears afterward. Before the words had even finished, Aziz first turned to look at Tehran, not having expected that even Tehran would laugh at him. Then, with a helpless expression, he said, anyway, among all the people I've ever met, Tehran's talent is unmatched. How about the two of you have a duel and see? At the word duel, Misha fell silent and looked at Tehran. Then a dazzling golden magic power gathered before her, and a deep blue light burst from her eyes. At that moment, Tehran raised his head and looked toward the sky, where golden thunder began to emerge from the dark clouds. It resonated with the magic gathered before Misha, as if the lightning in the clouds itself were under her control. The moment he sensed this, Tehran's expression changed sharply in shock, and in the instant Tehran's pupils contracted, the clouds in the sky dispersed. It was as if that terrifying presence had never existed at all. Yet beads of sweat slowly ran down Tehran's face. At that moment, Tehran's entire body was drenched in sweat from the shock of that aura just now. Misha looked at Tehran and said, there is no need for a duel. I don't think you would be my opponent anyway. Aziz stepped in front of the two of them and said, "If we're talking about raw magic power alone, I admit Tehran really can't match you. But what is truly astonishing about him is his talent for learning magic. Even you probably can't compare to him in that kind of magical talent." Hearing that, Misha said to Tehran without the slightest politeness, "Since Aziz praises your ability so highly, then let us see what you are really capable of." Knowing full well that he could not defeat her in terms of magical strength, Tehran proposed, "How about each of us demonstrates a spell the other does not know? Whoever can cast the other's spell first wins." The moment those words came out, even Aziz felt it was a very good suggestion, so he asked Misha what she thought. Seeing this, Misha naturally agreed. However, as far as she knew, Tehran did not even know what his own bloodline magic was. If she used bloodline magic, that would be unfair, so she decided to exclude bloodline magic. And she also decided to demonstrate first. Under Aziz's puzzled gaze, a fresh young sprout emerged from the flat ground. Immediately after, that sprout burst wildly out of the packed earth with unstoppable force, and in just an instant it wrapped itself around Aziz, and flung him high into the air. After doing this, Misha asked Tehran, "This is the magic of creating and controlling plants. Can you do it?" From the sky, Aziz shouted, "Let me down. I'm getting dizzy," but Misha merely told him to stay there for a while. At that moment, Tehran gave the vine ahead a simple glance, then bent down and placed his right hand on the ground. The magic that can ignite flames is, in truth, merely one way of expressing combustion, and magic that creates water is really drawing invisible moisture from the air. So growth is no different in principle from those two. Its real function is to make the seeds buried underground grow at an extreme rate. In other words, this is not creation at all. It is only urging growth. That made Misha slightly surprised. She asked Tehran, "From what you just said, it sounds as if you immediately understood the essence of the magic. Have you seen it before?" When Tehran said he had not, she let Aziz down and said, "I suppose even Aziz can be right sometimes. Then it is your turn. Let me see what exactly you can do." Misha's words made Tehran think for a moment, because he knew very clearly that if he used magic from the Zahar bloodline, it would be no different from seeking death. Then Tehran looked to one side again, as if recalling something, and stretched out his right hand toward a flower bed nearby. Before long, a rustling sound came from the flowers, and the source was a mouse, which quickly darted out from the flower bed. Seeing this, Misha said, "Only animal control? Of course not. This creature is only a material as well." The moment Tehran caught the mouse, a deep blue magic power surged beneath his eyes, then coiled around the mouse in his hand, and the mouse's entire body seemed to begin rotting. Misha fell silent at once. At that moment, Tehran said to her, "This should be enough, right?" Hearing Tehran's question, the silent Misha finally managed to utter two perfect words. With a mere crook of her finger, a mouse slowly walked to the hem of her dress. She grabbed the mouse without hesitation, then activated her powerful golden magic power. Yet even after a long while, the mouse showed no sign of rotting at all. Misha could not understand what Tehran had done. She knew very clearly that what he had done just now had definitely not been mere spellcasting. At that moment, Aziz asked Tehran, "How can you use magic like that? It's far too bizarre." Hearing this, Tehran said that he had simply thought of it on the spot. In truth, even Tehran himself had not expected that even a prestigious family like Albion knew so little in this area. This made Aziz say to Misha in a mocking tone, "Looks like the situation is not going very well. How about we just let our Tehran win directly?" But Misha immediately told him to shut up. "Do you think I can't do it?" In truth, causality was an extremely complex element in the use of magic. Whether the phenomenon one wished to trigger could naturally occur, whether the user clearly understood the magical steps behind that phenomenon, the total amount of magic consumed, and whether that amount was enough to bring about the phenomenon at all. Among these factors, the ability to perceive how magic was constructed was the key factor influencing both the success rate and the amount of magic consumed. Another way to make up for insufficient causality in magic was, in fact, simply to pour in a vast amount of magic power and compensate with sheer quantity. So Misha, not knowing the principle behind it, could only imagine making the mouse rot while it was still alive. Although the result did indeed match what she intended, the amount of magic power consumed reached an astonishing level. When Aziz saw this, he exclaimed, "It worked." Misha, having drained all her magic power, said while gasping, "I did it. I succeeded." But not long afterward, she collapsed to the ground in exhaustion. This made Aziz rush over anxiously, holding her as he asked what had happened. Tehran, however, was puzzled. Could it be because she had overused her magic? But simply exhausting one's magic should not cause unconsciousness. It seemed she was simply so utterly exhausted that she no longer had the strength to hold up her own body. Then Tehran observed her carefully. When he saw her palm, he seemed to understand something. He immediately picked her up and asked Aziz, "There shouldn't be any healing-type wizard here, right? Then bring some salt and water to her room." Misha in his arms genuinely startled Tehran. because she was so light that he could hardly tell whether he was holding a person or a small lamb. Perhaps from the very beginning, she had only been barely maintaining a body that she could not truly support. But now that last bit of magic was gone as well. A long while later, Misha finally barely woke up after exhausting both her strength and her magic power. Looking at her gradually regaining consciousness, the head of the Burke family asked with a worried expression, "Misha, what happened? Are you all right?" When Misha looked puzzled as to why she was lying in bed, the Burke family head said, "Aziz told me that you suddenly fainted while doing magical training with a guest. Is that really what happened?" Looking at Misha's silent expression, the Burke family head continued, "Could it be that that person did something to you? We have already kept him in the temple under observation." Hearing this, Misha told her, "No, it was not his fault. My collapse just now was my own mistake. My head hurts terribly right now, so please give me some time to rest." Seeing this, the Burke family head paused. "I made some soup for you. I know you do not eat because of magic, but you still need to think about your health and try to eat at least a little." When Misha remained silent, the Burke family head let out a sigh and turned to leave. But just as she was about to walk out of the room, Misha softly said thank you. Once she was alone in the room, Misha cast a light glance at the soup on the table, then reached out and picked it up, just as she lifted a spoonful of soup, and was about to bring it to her mouth. Something seemed to resurface in her mind. It was a terrifying scene, one in which her mother and younger sister kept begging her. The bowl dropped to the floor with a sharp crash. Misha's pale hands gripped the blanket tightly. Shaking, she covered her head, trying to stop herself from remembering those things. Meanwhile, in the temple of the lame goddess within the Burke family estate, a man lightly placed his hand on the hilt of his sword and told Tehran, "The doors and walls here are as solid as muscles tempered over 100 years. There is not the slightest gap in them. So don't even think of breaking through the wall and escaping." The speaker was none other than Leham Berg. Yet faced with such words, Tehran merely said simply that he understood, and that he truly had no intention of escaping. But Leham still insisted that those walls were extremely hard. Extremely hard. The seriousness on his face left Tehran unsure how to answer him. And just at that moment, Leham swung the blade he had just drawn. Tehran asked what he was doing, but Leham told him he was training. After saying that, he continued swinging the blade. First came a thrust, then a slash. These efficient movements carried no wasted motion at all, as if every step was preparing fully for the next strike. This made Tehran think to himself, so this is what a well-trained body looks like? Seeing Tehran watching him like that, Leham once again fixed him with that steadfast gaze and asked directly, "What did you see in my movements just now?" Tehran told Leham that he had only thought it looked impressive. That seemed to make Leham understand something. And while continuing to swing the blade, he said, "In truth, most nobles considered weapon skill insignificant, because attacking with magic was far easier. But that was only because their bodies were weak and pitiful, and so their will could not govern their flesh, leaving them reliant only on magic." After hearing that, Tehran calmly replied, "Unless their bloodline naturally leans toward physical strength, specializing in magic really is more practical and more efficient. But once they have truly experienced battle, they will understand that some situations cannot simply be avoided no matter how much they want to." Those words made Leham hand the blade to Tehran. He told Tehran to take it. Seeing this, Tehran asked, "I thought you were keeping me here because I was suspicious. But if you hand me a weapon just like this, is that really all right?" But Leham said it did not matter. "This is only an iron rod. What makes it a sword is the user's body. So with your current weak body, you couldn't possibly cut me." Hearing that, Tehran did not hesitate much and simply took hold of what he called an iron rod. Then, beneath Leham's steady gaze, he adopted a sword-gripping stance. Immediately, a deep blue magic power appeared all around Tehran's body. But this scene made Leham shout, "Do not pour any more magic power into the blade." Then, while adjusting Tehran's posture, he explained the principle behind it. "Put your center of gravity on your front leg, raise your hand, and overcome the weight of the blade." To this, Tehran respectfully said he understood. Leham praised him. "Good. Repeat it 10 times like that. Do not stop breathing. Pour your breath into your muscles. In truth, your body is actually rather good. If you ever get the chance, you absolutely must make time to train it properly." Although controlling magic power is the strongest means available to wizards, the body is still the primary foundation. A body tempered through countless trials can dominate the battlefield even without magic power. So I need you to understand that difference. Just as Tehran was listening to Leham and preparing to continue training, the doors of the goddess temple opened, and the one who entered was the head of the Burke family. After learning from Misha that it was not Tehran's fault that she had fainted, she came here to apologize to him. But Tehran did not mind, and only said that he was the one who ought to apologize. As a guest, what he had done earlier truly had been somewhat inappropriate. Yet she told Tehran that Misha wished to apologize to him formally, and asked whether he had time. When he met Misha, she said that she had felt deeply sorry after hearing that he had been confined to the temple because of her. while Tehran said that this had only been a necessary process, and that he was simply glad she was unharmed. After hearing that, Misha did not dwell on it any further, and instead recalled the magic from yesterday. She asked Tehran whether that spell that made animals rot was some undisclosed bloodline magic, because the amount of magic required to use it was simply absurd. But Tehran told her that it was not bloodline magic. In fact, as long as she understood the principle behind it, she too could use it very easily. That made her eager for Tehran to teach her. She said that if Tehran told her the secret behind that spell, then in exchange she would also teach him one of the secret arts of the Albion family. Seeing her like this, Tehran could only agree. So Tehran explained to her the exact principle behind it. Not long afterward, she understood the secret. The root of that magic was actually a spell that strengthened living organisms, except that the target being strengthened was a kind of microorganism no one could see. But because Misha did not know of the existence of microorganisms, her efficiency in using it had been so poor, even though she had succeeded in the end, that had ultimately been nothing more than a brute force method. Although Misha had to admit that she fell slightly short of Tehran in magical technique, she still wanted Tehran to tell Aziz that it had been a draw, because she truly did not want to see that fellow become unbearably smug after winning. Seeing Tehran agree without hesitation, she then prepared to tell him the secret art she had promised in return. Immediately afterward, she picked up a comb, and gently ran it through her hair. When objects rub against each other like this, they begin to attract one another, and that is. Before Misha could finish, Tehran said the very thing she had been about to describe. Static electricity. This genuinely surprised her. Had he already known? After standing there blankly for a while, she praised the secret art as quite profound, but said she had not expected Tehran to have already understood the mystery behind it, and so she found herself troubled over what secret art she could possibly teach him that he did not already know. After thinking for a while, she proposed that until Tehran had received sufficient compensation, he should train together with her. She made it clear that this was only to repay what she owed him, and not because she particularly needed him. Tehran agreed without hesitation. Then starting tomorrow, let's meet in the garden every evening. That night at dinner, the table was filled with a lavish spread of food. The Berk family had said that although it was not much, they must make sure to eat and drink their fill. This left Aziz, sitting beside Tehran, deeply puzzled. He did not understand why his mother had prepared something so extravagant. He had never seen such a display even on his own birthday. Someone who did not know better would think that the Lord of Albion himself had personally arrived. That made Tehran understand that this meal was by no means an ordinary one. Aziz's mother said, "Then let us continue their earlier topic. My son once promised a powerful magical item as the price for saving his life. So, Tehran, do you have any thoughts on what kind of magical item you would like?" Hearing her ask, Tehran told her that he wanted an item useful for defense. Although it was easy to use magic to harm others, protecting oneself was much more difficult. So if possible, Tehran wanted this magical item to have the effect of defending against sudden attacks. But those words made Aziz's mother pause. She said that although she had made similar things before, she did not currently have a ready-made one on hand. Aziz volunteered himself, but his mother rejected him directly, because she did not want the Berk family to be shamed by it. Another person nearby heard this and raised his hand to indicate that he could give it a try, saying that he had recently completed a commission from the main house, and so had some spare time at the moment. After hearing this, the Berk family head asked how he planned to do it. In response, he said that if the purpose was to defend against sudden attacks, then it would be best to make it into something that could be carried on the body at all times. So he decided to make the magical item into an ornament such as a ring, earring, or necklace, so that the defensive power within the bloodline could be triggered quickly. The only issue was that it would take a month to make. At this, the Berg family head praised him. Though deliberately showing off one's child may seem a little ridiculous, Mello truly is a highly skilled wizard. His craftsmanship is not far below mine. So in essence, this means it will be an item made over the course of a month by a wizard on the level of the head of a family whose line has produced magical items for generations. Hearing that, Tehran asked her gratefully whether this was not a little too grand. But she told Tehran that compared with her son's life, it was not grand at all. Then she told Tehran that for the next month, he was to remain with their family as a guest, and to stay here with peace of mind. Aziz praised him and said, "It seems mother likes you quite a lot. Last night before going to sleep, she also talked with me for a while, and much of it was about you. Your magical talent does not fall behind Misha's, and most importantly, you have never been lazy in your training. So mother wants to recruit you into our family. After that, she will definitely shower you generously with favors, then make you owe her, and finally introduce you to a pretty young lady. And that is one of the ways she tempts people." In fact, quite a few wizards joined the Berk family in exactly that way. Aziz's words made Tehran feel that it would all be rather troublesome. But Aziz waved his hand and told Tehran not to worry about it. After all, the magical item is only a small gift meant to please you. Even if you accept it, no one will force you into marriage, because my mother is not that tasteless. Then he asked Taran how he planned to spend the rest of the day. Taran told him that he had promised to train with Lady Misha that evening. The moment Aziz heard it was in the evening, he immediately threw an arm around Taran. He said that in that case, there was still plenty of time today. He told Taran to follow him on patrol. Zavalin might not be the capital, but there were still many things here worth enjoying. When Taran explained his own plan and said that on a day like this he wanted to stay in a corner and practice magic, Aziz grabbed Taran by the collar and dragged him along, telling him that life was short, and he should enjoy himself while he could, friend. Not long afterward, they arrived at a casino. When he saw that Taran had absolutely no interest in the place, Aziz began introducing one place after another to him. Just as he was enthusiastically telling Taran about them, Taran sharply noticed something. It was a sheet of paper posted on the wall. And the reason Taran was drawn to that long illustrated poster was because the person drawn on it looked extremely similar to Cain. Yet the expression was completely different. After that they came to a shop where a stage play was being performed. The story took place in a place called the Demon Desert by the warriors of Albion. There was a knight named Cain there, and after enduring an unimaginably difficult battle, he repelled all invading enemies with power that seemed heaven-sent. After hearing the story, Aziz clapped happily. He asked Taran what he thought of it. In response, Taran praised it as truly wonderful. It really seems Cain's humility is second to none. He once told me he was just an ordinary knight. That made Taran look forward even more to meeting him again. When they met next time, he would definitely ask whether this story was true. Early the next morning, when Taran had just opened his eyes, he silently stared at the scene before him. Laham was there as always, with that same steadfast gaze. He was squatting stiffly by Taran's bedside. Did you rest well? When Taran looked puzzled and was about to ask why he was here, Laham told him that yesterday he had already thought Taran's body was quite promising. So now he wanted Taran to train with him. He said that a body did not become stronger by lying down. The only path was tempering. Knowing very well that training would gain him more than playing around, Taran did not refuse. At that moment Aziz pushed the door open. He said there was an excellent performance today. But before he could finish speaking, he saw his uncle in the room with that same unshakable gaze. Laham told him, "We are just about to go train. You ought to exercise that weak body of yours too, so would you like to come along?" Aziz hurriedly refused. He said he had only just come back from going out and had not recovered yet. After saying that, he fled in panic. This left Taran quite puzzled as to what exactly was wrong with him. Only when Taran truly experienced the training Laham spoke of. Did you understand the reason for Aziz's panic? At that moment, Laham looked at Taran's trembling body and said, "Can you not hear your body crying out? If you cannot even endure this much pain, then Taran's will shall be ruled by the weakness of his body. Continue. This is the last one." By the time he finished that so-called last one, Taran collapsed to the ground in utter exhaustion. Laham asked whether Taran was tired, and Taran said that he was indeed somewhat exhausted. Laham's mouth curled upward. You should be grateful that Taran is a wizard, so this level of training is barely enough. Taran did not understand. Would it be different if I were not a wizard? It turned out that no matter how hard ordinary people trained their bodies, they would still weaken with the passage of time, and so they needed constant tempering just to maintain themselves. But wizards were different. The power of magic kept their bodies in an optimal state. As long as training produced results, those results would not be eroded by time. You should be rested enough by now, shouldn't you? Taran nervously wanted to say that he had not rested enough yet, but Laham said that the body did not lie. I know you have rested enough. Now begin learning to use weapons in battle. The tearing of his muscles made Taran cry out again and again. During his days with the Burke family, Taran's life was very full. In the mornings, he trained his physical fitness and weapons together with Laham. By evening, once he returned to the residence, he practiced magical technique over and over again with Misha. Before he knew it, 3 weeks had passed. A bolt of lightning struck just beside the center of the target. That made Taran let out a sigh. Missed again? Seeing this, Misha said, "You're struggling even more than expected." Taran replied helplessly that after all, he was not from Albion. Misha wanted to help Taran, but did not know how to teach him, because for her, lightning magic simply hit its mark the moment she fired it. Just then, a voice called out to Misha. Then the source of the voice walked toward them. After giving Taran a brief glance, the newcomer asked who Taran was. Misha stepped in front of Taran and said coldly to the man, "That is none of your concern. And why are you here? Had I not already informed the main house that no one was to disturb me during my rest?" Hearing that, the man told Misha that the family head was summoning her. The main reason was that dark elves had already begun rampaging across the south. They had captured 3 cities, and were now even assembling an expeditionary army. At this, Taran's expression suddenly turned grave. It seemed they had finally appeared.